Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Okay, you want to know what's in this healthcare bill they're going to be voting on in about an hour? You're in the right place. I'm going to tell you what's in this healthcare bill. I'm going to tell you the major provisions. I've dug deep in there, folks, and I've weeded some of this stuff out to be able to pass it on to you. I'm also going to show you how many in the drive-by media are trying to use comments I made on yesterday's program about pre-existing conditions to kill it. The drive-bys are trying to drive a wedge between Republicans and voters using me, and in the process illustrating their entire lack of understanding, their total ignorance of practically everything involved in this issue. It's great to be with you. How are you? Rush Limbaugh here. We're doing Open Line Friday on Thursday today because I'm not going to be here tomorrow. I have to do some things I can't tell you. I can only tell you where I've been when I get back, which will happen on Monday. Mark Stein's going to be here tomorrow. So whatever you want to talk about today, feel free. The phone number is 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Also saw, before we get to the healthcare business, former President Obama. Oh, do you know that there's a biography coming out of Obama in which it is written that he once idolized Donald Trump and wanted to be Donald Trump? He wanted to be a hugely independently wealthy businessman. This is at the same time he was deciding maybe to go gay or not. It was. Are you sitting in there laughing? I'm not making that up. You've not heard that? He said he toyed with the idea. And the book also says he cheated on Michelle before they got married. How do you do that? How do you cheat on somebody before you get married? Well, I guess. Anyway, did you see where Obama is meddling in a foreign election? Now, yesterday, we had to listen again. This poor Comey guy. I've got so many different reactions to this guy in my email. People feel sorry for him for the dilemma that he has. Oh, my God, what's he supposed to do? Folks, there's no dilemma here that he didn't create. Whatever circumstance the FBI director is in, he put himself there with that July 5th press conference where he did two things. If you remember, he laid out the case against Hillary Clinton. He essentially said she's guilty. And then in the end of his press conference, he said, but I don't think she intended to do this, and therefore there's no threshold for charging her. And so we are closing the case. You never do that. The FBI investigators, DOJ, you never, ever. He did things that never are done. You never go public with a case, number one. Particularly, you never go public with a case that you're not going to bring charges and close it, because what if something happens, and it did, that you have to reopen it? You know, Hillary focuses on that letter the 28th of October. That letter would have been unnecessary if Comey had not done the press conference on July 5th. But then none of this would have been necessary if Hillary hadn't broken the law and set up her own email server and forwarding email after email to Huma, who was forwarding it to her husband, Weiner, so Carlos Danger to be printed out. If Hillary hadn't done any of that, that she'd been a better candidate, none of this would matter. It's all academic. And Comey's out there saying, and this is really way beyond the scope of an FBI director, I mean, of any investigator. This is testimony yesterday before the Senate Intelligence Committee. Russia favored Trump because Putin hated Hillary Clinton. Where did that come up in an investigation? How in the hell did that come up? How do you ascertain that with ontological certitude? Because it doesn't make any sense. Putin would have wanted the format, which should have been Hillary. Anyway, we've been through all that. I thought that claim that Russia favored Trump because that just furthers this idiocy that the Russians affected the outcome of the election. Anyway, back to Barack Hussein O. Oh, speaking of Barack Hussein O, there's some people now look at the government level looking into the fact he's making so much money on speeches that they're going to cancel his pension. His presidential pension is not necessary. $60 million book deal, $400,000 speeches every week. Anyway, Barack Hussein O. has endorsed the 39-year-old playboy running for the presidency of France, Emmanuel Macron. And so this is a last minute. I mean, the election is 3 days from now. So it'll be Saturday. The election here for, Thursday, Friday, Sunday. So Obama here with a last minute intervention in the French election. This is not supposed to be kosher. We're not supposed to be doing this. I mean, this is akin to what the Russians did. The Russians are trying to impact the outcome of our election. Obama's trying to impact the outcome of the French election. But there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of people upset. Yesterday on this program, ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, I want to thank everybody who sent me notes. I had more favorable response to the segments yesterday on insurance, what it is, how it is related to health insurance, pre-existing conditions. I seriously had more email thanking me for doing that than I've had on anything in a long time. I've even had a couple people say it was brilliant, and it was so good that I should repeat it, because more and more people need to hear it. Now, it took about 3 segments to go through, so I'm not going to repeat it verbatim here. But one of the points that I made was explaining how insurance actually works in terms of its business model, and how when you insure something after it's happened, we're not talking insurance there. Your house catches fire, you don't have insurance, you can't get homeowners insurance at that point. You have a yacht, you have a boat, whatever. You don't have insurance on it, it sinks. You can't call an insurance company and have them insure it. It won't happen. By the same token, insurance companies, if left to their own devices, would never insure people who already have a disease, particularly if it's terminal. It will just won't do it. It's not insurance. Insurance, well, you know what it is. You pay a premium hoping something never happens to you. The people you're paying the premium to hope it never happens. You don't want to be paid off because you don't want the calamity to happen. The insurance company doesn't want to pay off. They don't want the calamity. You're buying a policy. You're buying insurance against something very devastating, catastrophic happening to you. You're hoping it never happens. And you're willing to pay the price for the insurance company to take the risk. You're paying somebody else to take the risk. And they make calculations on how much it's going to cost them to insure you and other like-minded or like-circumstanced people. And these are called the actuarial tables, and then they set up their premium costs based on all of that with the ultimate desire to be a profit. None of that applies with pre-existing conditions. And not one time yesterday did I say that we should deny it. Not one time yesterday did I say they should be exempted. Quite the opposite. I was hip deep in compassion at a whole program yesterday, and I said if we're going to create the illusion that people with pre-existing conditions have insurance, because that's what it is. It's an illusion. It isn't insurance. Words mean things. I'm the mayor of Realville. So we need to create a pool of money over here that's funded somehow, premiums from other people, government addition, whatever it is, and those people's health care needs are taken care out of that pool. It's about 4% of the American population that has pre-existing conditions. And you can't devise a national health care system or a national insurance policy for 4% of the population. You do it for the 96%. You handle the 4% in a different way. Well, in going through this, which I made it crystal clear, I didn't insult anybody. I didn't do anything but give everybody the lay of the land. The left is now trying to take what I said, and in doing so, they're admitting they haven't the slightest understanding of insurance. Therefore, they haven't the slightest idea what I said. They're trying to take my comments yesterday, some of them are, and to drive a wedge. I don't actually know between who, but their ultimate desire is to sabotage the Republican effort to repeal and replace Obamacare. The example I have here, CNN International. Last night, they got a program on CNN International called Newsroom. It's hosted by somebody named Aisha Sasay. And Aisha Sasay was speaking with a Republican consultant by the name of John Thomas about the health care reform bill. And during the discussion about the inclusion of an amendment that prevents insurance companies from denying insurance to people with pre-existing, that is not what is going to happen. That is not how people with pre-existing conditions are going to be dealt with. This health care bill will treat people with pre-existing conditions in such a way that they have an ability to pay for their health care, for their medical needs. But it isn't insurance. It's something else. By definition, it must be something else because it can't be insurance. So, Aisha Sasay, in her question and comment to the Republican consultant, says this.
In terms of the crux of the matter, obviously pre-existing conditions, we know that was the big issue. We know that they found some kind of workaround for the House. But, the likes of Rush Limbaugh already coming out and saying, trying to provide insurance for people with pre-existing conditions, it's like effectively putting them on welfare. There are those on the right who are opposed, who are offended by this, and they will cause problems down the line.
See, trying to drive a wedge, offended by my claim that what we're essentially doing is putting people with pre-existing conditions on welfare. Well, call it what you will. It isn't insurance. And that matters. We have already seen the destruction we've seen the destruction of marriage because people don't know what the definition of it is. We have seen the destruction of a whole lot of things that the left has wanted to blow up because people don't know what the definition is and therefore are susceptible to concrete terms being redefined here. I'm sorry if the term welfare bothers anybody, but it is, if you don't want to call it that, call it something else, but it's not, and it isn't insurance. If it were insurance, they wouldn't sell it to these people. That's the whole point. So when you tell the insurance companies they have to sell it to people, well, then it becomes something entirely different. And the point of this, the reason this is important is that they represent 4% of the population. There's already a pool of $130 billion in the healthcare bill before the light bulb guy got involved, Fred Upton. Was already a pool of $130 billion in the Republican bill to handle people with pre-existing conditions. They were not being left out. They were going to be accommodated. They were going to be cared for, taken care of, what have you. $130 billion in a pool over here. They didn't create it. They didn't pay any premiums to get that money there. Where'd it come from? Now, Fred Upton, for whatever reason, the light bulb guy, he's the guy that led the ban on the incandescent light bulb. He's from Michigan in favor of those curlicue, whatever they are, the things that are disaster and have since been. The incandescent light bulb was banned. Now it's back. You can buy them again. But he demanded an $8 billion infusion into that pool, making it $138 million. And once that was promised to him, he became a yes vote from a no vote. Here is how the Republican consultant, by the way, John Thomas, reacted to the question you just heard from Aisha Sasay.
President Trump is not a principled conservative, and I think conservative leaders know that. So they're speaking out more than ever against the president to hold him accountable because they're worried that he'll just go where the winds are blowing because he wants to make a deal.
So I mean, that answer is what it is. I don't get how it reacts to her question. But anyway, that's where we are with this. Now, one other thing. It was last Friday, almost a week ago on this program. What has been missing here from the entire Trump agenda? Addressed this all week, and I started on this last week when this budget deal started looking like it was. I said, the president is the guy that's going to have to make things happen where his agenda is concerned. And I drew an analogy to Lyndon Johnson and how Lyndon Johnson made Congress yield to what he wanted and what he needed. I made mention of that. This was last Friday. Audio soundbite number 5. 3, 2, 1. Well, we don't have audio soundbite number 5. Essentially, what I said was repealing and replacing Obamacare was mentioned at every rally. So why doesn't the president go in there and tell them what for? This is what LBJ did. LBJ treated them like a bunch of beagles. He grabbed those Republicans by the ears and took them up to the White House lawn, Democrats too, and told them the way things are going to be. LBJ sometimes would only take phone calls from Republicans when he was in the toilet, which is also true. LBJ was a no-nonsense guy. You wonder why Trump can't go in there and say, look, guys, I won the election. Here's what we're going to do. This is my agenda, and I'm going to make it happen. This is what was not happening. Do we have audio soundbite number 6? Apparently we don't have audio. Oh, we do. Well, then play it.
Last 24 hours meeting with and calling roughly a dozen lawmakers.
President Trump is personally lobbying House Republicans to back the bill.
President Trump has been all in on the effort to lock down votes.
He really got re-engaged in the last several days.
After all of this arm twisting that's been going on.
President Trump twisting arms. Still twisting arms, still trying to cajole or pressure members, find that sweet spot.
Some last-minute arm twisting going on.
Some arm twisting to go and get some folks across the finish line.
Even some arm twisting.
The president really deserves a lot of credit on this one. The president all week doing what he does best, and that's negotiate.
The president has been doing this over and over again with individual members of Congress. This is the kind of stuff that President Obama really hated to do.
Well, it's the stuff that Trump needed to do. He has to drive the agenda. He has to be behind the wheel here. It's his agenda. He has to be the one leading it. And it looks like on this go-around on healthcare he did, following my advice last Friday. We'll be back, folks. Don't go away. Republicans need 217 votes to pass this thing. The vote is next hour. The latest whip count says they have 218. So they have a cushion of 1. There were 2 flips yesterday. Billy Long, Republican Missouri, Fred Upton, the light bulb guy from Michigan. And here is Billy Long at the Washington press conference outside the White House after talking to Trump about why he switched.
When they made what I consider the change to pre-existing conditions, that's when I said, I'm a no. The president said, Billy, really need you. We need you, man. I said, you don't have me. He said, really need you. We went through that for 20 minutes. He called back yesterday. We need you, we need you, we need you. I'm happy to announce that the people in the 7th District of Missouri will have pre-existing conditions covered adequately.
They were covered with a pool of $130 billion. You know what's going on here. And folks, I don't care. It is what it is. These guys just angling for the press and the PR that they had a major role in increasing the amount. It's a great re-election effort, fine and dandy. Here's the light bulb guy, Fred Upton, at the same place, describing his meetings with President Trump.
When he called me yesterday, I told him I was a no. And I told him that I was a no because of the provision on pre-existing illnesses. So yesterday, I read him back his statement where he said that this bill would be just as strong on pre-existing illnesses as Obamacare. I want him to keep that pledge.
So they got $8 billion additional for it, and the pledge has been kept. So what I said yesterday happens to be also true, and that is that this version of the House bill has been turning on the whole concept of coverage for payment of people with pre-existing conditions. And as I said, there was a pool of $130 billion authorized already in the Republican bill. These two guys, Long and Upton, got an additional $8 billion added to it, and that, as far as they were concerned, made the difference. But you see the story here. Yeah, Trump he wasn't budging. He wasn't budging, but I went in there, and I told him what for. Trump said, we need you, we need you, we need you. Well, yeah, well, you don't got me. You don't got me until you sweeten the pot. So Trump sweetened the pot. We're in there. So I'll tell you what else is in this thing when we get back. Don't go away. Hi, folks. Welcome back. El Rushbo with talent on loan from God. I've just decided to do something different. I've got plenty of time to tell you what's in this bill, which I'm going to do. I just want to put it off for a couple of minutes because I've got a golden opportunity here. There are, millions of new people listening to this program, first time ever, some cases first time in a long time. I'm going to take the occasion here of the new expansive listenership to illustrate how the Democrats do not change in how they oppose things they don't like. I want to demonstrate how they lie. I want to demonstrate how their playbook doesn't change. I want to show you how they go about it. The reason for this, I just saw Pelosi. Just saw a tape of Pelosi on CNN claiming that Republicans want to take health care away from people. And this is simply a rerun of many pages in their playbook. This is not what the Republicans are going to do, obviously, but this is how the Democrats play it. So we're going to start here with a series of sound bites to illustrate this, then and now. Up first is Poppy Harlow on CNN this morning, and she is speaking about the Republican replacement health care bill. And April Ryan of the Urban Radio Network is also on set.
Now, if this makes it through, this is on Republicans' watch, right? Every sick kid is on Republicans' watch. What is the political risk for them? Every sick kid is on. This is an anchorette at CNN. This is not even a Democrat. Oh, sorry. Of course he's a Democrat. This is the media. Every sick kid is on Republicans. Why? Was every sick kid on the Democrats' watch or on No, there weren't going to be any sick kids with Obamacare. Nobody was ever going to get sick and nobody was ever going to die, and everybody was going to be taken care of cradle to grave. It was the most wonderful, beautiful thing. Now, every sick kid on the Republican watch. Not every sick adult. Not every sick woman. Not every sick man. Every sick kid. It's the Republicans' fault. Here's a montage. Democrats going back to the same old playbook. We have Cory Booker, Anthony Brown, Jim McGovern, Joaquin Castro, Sheila Jackson Lee, Nancy Pelosi, all claiming Republicans will kill people with this health care bill.
This will cost American lives if it ever becomes law. This will mean death, pain, and suffering to people's families.
It's a life and death proposition. This bill will be devastating to the people of this country, force even more people to lose their health care.
Allowing foster care children to sleep in state offices. Allowing sex trafficking and human trafficking victims to go to jail because there's nowhere else to put them.
The Trump cares mother of all bombs of health care dropped on the American people.
It isn't just wrong, it's inhumane.
They are threatening devastation in the lives of America's families. This is deadly. This is deadly.
Stop and think, folks, stop and think of what you're hearing here. What is this Joaquin Castro who said allowing foster care children to sleep in state offices, allowing sex trafficking and human trafficking victims to go to jail because there's nowhere else to put them? This is what the Republican health care reform bill is going to do? Sheila Jackson Lee, it's the mother of all bombs dropped on the American people. Pelosi, this is deadly. This is deadly. For those of you new to the program, this is what the Democrats always do. This is who they've always been. Let's go back to 1995. 1995 is eons ago, right? 22 years ago, something like that. The budget battle of 1995, the Democrats claimed that Republicans wanted to kill children, starve children, and old people.
Why do the Republicans want to take apples and milk away from 6-year-olds?
Starving children is not the solution.
The Republicans are taking food out of the mouths of millions of needy children.
It's cruel to kids.
Stop declaring war on our kids.
War on their children.
War on their children.
I also would like to speak to a moment about the mean-spiritedness I'm hearing about on the floor today.
But how can they be so mean-spirited?
These cuts are mean-spirited.
The mean-spirited Republicans.
It is mean-spirited. It is vicious.
These draconian, mean-spirited, and immoral cuts in funding.
We're seeing draconian cuts.
Once again, they're playing Robin Hood in reverse, taking from the poor to give to the rich.
We're going to let the kids go hungry again.
They're coming for our children. They're coming for the poor. They're coming for the sick, the elderly, and the disabled.
And that's our old buddy John Lewis from Selma, who was beat upside the head by Democrats. They turned a water hose on him and the dogs, Bull Connor and the boys. But it's the Republicans, the starved kids. It's Robin Hood in reverse. These are mean-spirited cuts. It's cruel to the kids. We're taking food out of the mouths of millions of children. And there weren't any cuts, folks. There were zero cuts. Do you think the budget ever gets smaller? The Republicans are trying to get reductions in the rate of growth, but there were no cuts. And I just want those of you new to the program to hear exactly who the Democrats are. This is how they resort to any Republican legislation. Kill people, starve people, war on kids, the mother of all bombs. They're coming for our children. They're coming for the old folks. They're coming for the sick. They're coming for the healthy. They're coming for all of this stuff. It never, ever changes. Up next was this morning in Washington on Capitol Hill. Pelosi held her weekly press briefing. You just heard, by the way, in this soundbite, it was Albert Wynn, who at the time was a member of Congress from Maryland. He's a Democrat. It was Albert Wynn who said, once again, they're playing Robin Hood in reverse. That's 1995. Here's Pelosi this morning.
They're terrified of the facts of what that CBO report would say. They're afraid of the truth of what it means to American people, and people are understanding what this means to them. They were afraid that American people will realize that they're destroying health care just because they want a tax break to the high end. The biggest transfer of wealth, one of the biggest transfers of wealth in our history, Robin Hood in reverse.
Same playbook, same page from the playbook, same claim. Republican health care now is just a tax scheme to rob the poor and give the money to the rich. That's how the rich got money. They stole it from the poor. I've never understood the math on that, how you take money from the poor and get rich, but that's what the Democrats claim. Robin Hood in reverse. We have another flashback, a montage, 1995 and 2012. Albert Wynn, Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz, Clarence Page, David Callahan, Charles Blow, Vice President Al Gore. Listen to this.
Once again, they're playing Robin Hood in reverse, taking from the poor to give to the rich.
Really, it's like reverse Robin Hoodism. It's really shocking.
Reverse Robin Hood. This is Reaganomics on steroids.
Robin Hood in reverse.
You cannot play Robin Hood in reverse.
It's Robin Hood in reverse. Take from the kids, take from education, take from protecting our water.
It's like Robin Hood in reverse.
That's right. That's Obama. It's like Robin Hood in reverse. It's Al Gore there, Robin Hood in reverse, protecting our water. 1995. 2017, Robin Hood in reverse. Same exact, meaningless, lying sack of excrement BS from the Democrats and the media. Nothing changes. Now, back in 1995, the Republicans were scared to death that this stuff was all working, and so this stuff from 1995 is why, to this day, and I say this to both you veteran listeners and you new ones, this stuff, these sound bites represent the school lunch cuts, starving kids. That is what Republicans remember when the Democrats start throwing around government shutdown. That kind of chatter from the Democrats is what the Republicans are afraid of. They don't want to hear it, which is why they make modifications in legislation. And yet, look, no matter what the Republicans do, the Democrats still say the same stuff. It doesn't matter what the Republican legislation actually contains. It doesn't matter what the details are. Just because it's the Republicans, the Democrats say people are going to die, people are going to get sick, the kids are going to get starved. And many of us are fed up with this working. We're fed up with the Republicans caving to it. We're fed up with this kind of literal insanity being effective. It ought to be laughed out of the arena. We have time for one. No, I got to take a break. We'll do that and be right back. I'll get into some of the details of the bill right after this, folks. I just saw the call roster, so I'm going to make another change. We're going to go to the phones here in just a second, and I will detail the health care reform bill in the monologue segment of the next hour. That's, by the way, when the vote is supposed to start sometime in the next hour. You got to hear this soundbite. This is yesterday afternoon, Wolf Blitzer's CNN Situation Room's got Dianne Feinstein on there. Big-time Democrat senator, Senate Intelligence Committee and all that. And Wolf is talking to her about the Russians and evidence.
Do you have evidence that there was, in fact, collusion between Trump associates and Russia during the campaign?
Not at this time.
Well, that's a pretty precise answer. I know the investigation is continuing. Senator, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Not at this. That's been the answer for a year and a half. Folks, it's not at this time. Here, Wolf. Oh, God, you sound too certain. Well, the investigation's ongoing, right? You're still going to find something, maybe, right? Thank you. Any evidence yet? No. Not at this time. Yeah, they did. They both sounded in shock. She sounded in shock with her own answer. He sounded shocked to hear her answer. Hillary has come up with yet another reason why she lost the election. It runs from the Russians and Comey, and now Hillary Clinton has begun criticizing the 2016 debate moderators for not asking Trump any questions about job creation. Not making this up. This is the Washington Free Beacon. Hillary Clinton criticized 2016 debate moderators for not asking Trump questions about job creation. Now, her criticism is baseless because Trump was asked about job creation twice during two different debates moderated by Chris Wallace and Lester Holt. And this is according to the left-wing factcheck.org. What is she talking about? Yeah, I lost. You know why? Because they didn't ask Trump about job creation. What, if they had asked Trump about job creation, you would have somehow won? Woman's not there, folks. The elevator is not going to the top floor. She's an order of fries short of a Happy Meal here. This is not pretty. It's getting worse. To the phones, we start in Rumson, New Jersey. Christine, welcome. Great to have you with us. How are you?
Oh, what a pleasure, Rush, to speak with you. I'm calling regarding the Comey testifying yesterday, and as an American, it was such an insult for him to claim that Huma somehow forwarded thousands of classified emails to a pervert so that he could print them out, and that was not a crime.
No, because they couldn't find any intent, you see.
Exactly. And Cruz, I mean, you could see they were just flabbergasted with these responses, and Cruz tried to explain to him that intent had nothing to do with the statute, and I have a theory, and I've heard this before, but I firmly believe that this, all roads lead to the Messiah, and that is Barack Hussein Obama.
How so?
Because if it was ever shown that emails from him were sent to Hillary and the email address was not .gov, well, then he's implicated.
Well, he's already implicated because he's admitted sending emails to her private server.
Exactly.
He knew it. I mean, he knew that she had one. She wasn't the only one that had one. I mean, it's been revealed now that Obama was spying on thousands of American people via the NSA. That story's not at the top of the stack today because health care is dominant. But I will get to it before the program ends. Look, this whole Comey thing, folks, I'll tell you what, where you can trace this back to is that July 5th press conference. You remember we were all watching it in bated breath because this is not done. We don't get status reports on investigations like the FBI never, ever details an ongoing investigation, particularly one where there will be no charges. We never hear about it. So this press conference that Comey did it had two parts. The first part was almost a list of charges. It was a recitation of the crimes that she committed. And I remember watching it thinking, my God, where's this headed? Is this going where I... And then the last, maybe half of it, a little less, was the exoneration, where we couldn't find any intent. No reasonable prosecutor would ever bring charges on things, which is bogus. So why did this happen? Well, Comey says it happened because Loretta Lynch let Clinton come on board her plane on the tarmac in Phoenix. That threw the investigation over to him, and he felt duty-bound because she had done that to bring people up to speed because it was so relevant and important in an election. But he ultimately said, I'm not going to be the guy who brings charges against one of the candidates running for president. I'm not doing that. He didn't say that. That was our analysis of this. And he then announced that the case was closed. There was nothing here, nothing there. And everybody was speculating. Remember, some people thought, he did this because he can't charge, because Obama won't let him charge. So he took the occasion to go out here and tell the American people of the crimes that she's committed, and she'll let the voters be the jury. Remember that analysis? Well, then we go forward to October 28th, and Comey goes to Congress, and he reveals that they found a bunch of classified emails on a server of Huma that might have been it did end up on the server of Wiener, Carlos Danger. And we're going to look into these. We're going to find out if there's classified data going back and forth. And then after a few days, nothing to see here. Didn't happen. Yesterday, Comey says, negotiated. I was so disconcerted, so upset. I can't believe I had to do it. I felt bad. I was going to throw up. Hillary's now saying that appearance to Congress is what did her in. It's absurd. It's absurd. What did her in was the July 5th. What did her in was she's a lousy candidate. What did her in was she's the one trafficking with an illegal server, and none of this would have happened had she not been doing that. So let me get this straight. Comey can tell us who Putin wanted and who Putin didn't like. He can ascertain Putin's motives, but he can't tell us whether or not Hillary intended to do anything. Does that make sense? Not to me. Hi, how are you? Great to have you with us, my friends. Having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. I am Rush Limbaugh, meeting and surpassing all the expectations everybody in the audience has each and every day. It's the objective, and we achieve it. Telephone number 800-282-2882. Email address lrushbaugh@eibnet.us. Okay, so the House is at any moment going to commence the vote on their version of the Repeal and Replace Obamacare Act. If it passes, and it probably will since they're going to have the vote. If they didn't have the votes, they wouldn't do the votes. It's probably going to pass. I'm hearing that they've got 218. They need 217. And this bill goes to the Senate, where it's already being said that it's going to be DOA, that it doesn't have a chance and all of that. That Republicans don't like some of the stuff in this bill, the Republicans in the Senate. We'll just have to see. If it passes the House, I guarantee you there's going to be a victory party as though it has become law already, both at the White House and in the House of Representatives. But before detailing some of the changes and addendums in the Republican bill, I want to give you an example of how the drive-by media is attempting to sabotage the whole Republican effort here. Now, what happened? I happened to see it. It was about a half hour ago. CNN, John King, they're doing a copycat of the show Fox does at noon. It's essentially a panel discussion show. What John King, the CNN host, did, he played audio of every question I asked Vice President Pence earlier this week when Pence was here. What day was Pence here? Was it Monday or Tuesday? Tuesday. So he replays just my questions and one answer of the vice president's at the end of the bite. Now, you heard the interview, so I'm not going to replay that. But every question, why vote Republican if this is what it's going to mean? That we keep hearing this, it'll kick the can down the road, we'll get them next time. Those questions that I asked, what's the point of even voting Republican if the Democrats are going to win? If the Democrats are going to get their agenda, why are we even voting Republican? He plays all of that. He plays Pence answering, said, we didn't kick it down the can. We won. We smoked them this time. And then it's what King said after that that is important here.
Again, that's in the context of the budget deal, not the health care vote. But you just hear the exasperation from Rush Limbaugh. You see the criticism in those headlines I showed you from conservative media outlets earlier, where they think this president and the Republican Congress, let me be clear, they blame the Republican Congress as much, if not more than the president, is not standing up for their ideas. That's why this health care vote is so important to this president, to say this is a Republican promise. This is one, yes, it's just a House vote, but at least we are finally on the way to getting something big and important to you done.
So they're trying, with the key point here is when he says, let me be clear, they blame the Republican Congress as much, if not more than the president. How can you say that when I'm talking to the vice president? I was not talking to Paul Ryan. I was not talking to anybody in the House about kicking it down the road. I was talking to the vice president. I have been, if not on a tear, I have been pretty demonstrative here that what has been missing in this thing is energy and impetus from the White House to get this done. It's their agenda. They ought to know that the establishment doesn't want it. From the Republican leadership to the Democrat leadership to the K Street leadership, nobody wants Trump to succeed. He's going to have to ram it down their throats. But what they're trying to do here, you see, but they're really blaming the Republican Congress more than they're blaming Trump. And they're trying to imply there that Trump is protected and nobody will criticize him because Trump voters are robotic supporters and they'll find any way they can to defend him and have to attack the Republicans. You may be right if you say that about others, but how you can say that about me when I'm challenging the vice president on this and not some House leader? At any rate, let's get to some of the details of this bill. And this is in as simple language and explanation as I can make it. It's a side-by-side comparison of what was in Obamacare and what's changing, what's being kept, and what's being removed. Now, under Obamacare, the individual mandate requires people who can afford it to go out and buy health insurance. This House Republican bill repeals that. Kind of. Because there is a caveat. It is repealed. However, there are penalties in the House bill, the Republican bill, if you don't have insurance. Well, they're not penalties. The penalties that are in Obamacare would disappear. The change is that if you go uninsured for more than 63 days, you will have to pay a 30% surcharge on your premium when you get insurance. This is said to be an incentive designed to encourage people to maintain insurance coverage. So while they're repealing the individual mandate and repealing the penalties, they are replacing that with a proviso that you can't go longer than 2 months without coverage. Because you can, but if you do, you're going to have a 30% surcharge added to your premium when you do get a policy. Now, some are going to think this is a distinction without a difference. You say you're repealing the individual mandate and repealing penalties, but then there's a penalty here if you don't have insurance. You can go 63 days without having a policy, and then if you do that, when you finally sign up and get insurance, you have a 30% surcharge on your premium. Now, they think the employer is going to bear the brunt of this. 159 people get their insurance through their employers still. One of the Obamacare objectives was to end that, and they were not able to make that happen fast enough. But getting you off your enrollment at your company would automatically direct you to an exchange or the government single payer. That's where they wanted Obamacare to go. Employer mandate. In Obamacare, the employer mandate required larger companies to provide affordable insurance to their employees. That has been repealed totally, and that's it. So employers no longer are required to provide affordable insurance to their employees. Now you might, but that's not good, right? Well, it's going to work out because as job creation happens and employment ramps up, the competition for quality employees is going to result, and employers will sweeten the pot on the benefits side as incentives to people to sign up. So that theoretically will work out. Subsidies for out-of-pocket expenses under Obamacare. Tax credits under Obamacare would be extended to help some people pay deductibles and co-payments. The House Republican bill repeals this in 2020. Not immediately. It repeals it in 2020. So the tax credits to help some people pay deductibles and make co-payments will remain. Taxes. Under Obamacare, there were new taxes on high incomes, new taxes on prescription drugs. There were taxes on medical devices, including indoor tanning salons, if you recall. The Republican bill repeals these. It rolls back the tax increases, which had been imposed under Obamacare to help pay for coverage expansion. So all those taxes are gone. New taxes on high incomes, taxes on prescription drugs, taxes on medical devices, indoor tanning, gone. Medicaid expansion. Under Obamacare, more than 30 states expanded coverage by raising the eligibility cutoff to 138% of the poverty level. Now, on this one, we're definitely in the weeds here. And this, to me, is the epitome of what's wrong when the government gets involved in anything. What the hell is this? Medicaid expansion. Medicaid is welfare health care for the poor. More than 30 states expanded coverage with Medicaid by raising the eligibility cutoff to 138% of the poverty level. What this means is that whatever the poverty annual salary is, whatever the annual income that's called poverty is, 138% of that, you could still qualify for Medicaid. The states raised it to that in order to get more people qualified. Here's the way it changes in the Republican bill. Republican bill will let states keep the Medicaid expansion that they've engaged in and would allow states that expanded Medicaid to continue getting federal funding as they would have under Obamacare until 2020. Federal funding for people who became newly eligible starting in 2020 or who left the program and came back would be reduced. In other words, the amount of money available for newly arrived people under the state Medicare expansion, the pool of money for those people would be reduced. States that have not expanded Medicaid already would not be allowed to do so in the future. The Republican bill also allows states to impose work requirements for some Medicaid beneficiaries. Remember, Medicaid is for the poor. Medicare is for our seasoned citizens. Medicaid the bill allows states to impose work requirements for some Medicaid beneficiaries. So if you're going to get Medicaid under the new Republican plan, you may have to work for it. It proposes capping federal funding per enrollee based on how much each state was spending in 2016. States also have the option to receive a lump sum block grant if they want. You following all this? You're following this. You could explain this to people. So what does this mean? You can't explain it, but you understand what I'm saying. Okay, cool. Pre-existing conditions policy. Under Obamacare, insurers were required to cover people regardless of pre-existing medical conditions. Obamacare prevents insurance companies from setting prices based on a customer's health history. Well, there you go. Whatever this is, that isn't insurance. I'm not trying to offend anybody. And you may think, so what if it's not insurance? We're not talking about insurance. We're talking about people being treated. We're talking about people being able to pay for it. Okay, fine. If that's all that matters, then Obamacare required insurers to cover people, whether they had pre-existing conditions or not, which is going to totally destroy. The reason it matters, folks, is because it blows the pricing structure out the wazoo. Obamacare bars insurance companies from setting prices based on a customer's health history, meaning they can't charge you more if you're always going to be sick. That's right, Rush. That's only fair. No, it's not. Not if we're calling it insurance. Listen, you're age 20, you go get a life insurance policy. It's going to cost you X because the tables say you're going to live 50 more years or 60. When you're 70 and go buy a life insurance policy, what do you think it's going to cost you? It's going to cost you a hell of a lot more because you're not going to be alive that much longer to pay premiums. So the risk is much greater that you're going to die at the time you take. So it's going to cost differently. That's how insurance works. This is not what this is. But I don't want to split hairs. Here's the change in the Republican bill. The Republican bill allows states to waive the rule restricting price differences based on health. That means that there can be price distinctions on people with pre-existing conditions, people in bad health, and people who are healthy. And that matters because this is how premiums are going to come down for healthy people, which is the vast majority of the people that we're talking about here. And this is one of the fundamental necessities of this bill, is to bring down costs. This provision is the first step toward bringing down costs. Insurers would be allowed to charge higher prices to sick customers who had experienced a lapse in coverage of more than 63 days, as long as the state also set up a program to help high-risk patients obtain insurance. Another thing this does is, it's not farms it out, but it sends it to the states to handle this, because prices differ from state to state, populations differ, demographics all differ. So the state, remember, in any situation like this, the closer you can devise your solution to the root of the problem, the more efficient the solution. Why Washington should be coming up with a uniform, unilateral policy for everybody in every state is ridiculous. So letting the states handle this is also a mechanism for lowering premiums. In addition, in the Republican bill, it would add, and this is the light bulb guy's deal, would add $8 billion over 5 years to help people with pre-existing medical conditions in an effort to satisfy Republicans who voiced concern about the effects of these waivers. The light bulb guy thought that the relaxing of the waivers, meaning insurance companies can now charge different prices based on a person's health, which it would not need to be a law for that. The reason we do is because Obama blew that up. The light bulb guy thought, well, that's going to result in pre-existing condition people having to pay more. So we need more in the pool. So Trump said, okay, we'll throw $8 billion in there. And the light bulb guy and Billy Long said, fine. Thank you for letting us twist your arm. And now I've got to take a brief time out. There's a little bit more here. Essential health benefits is a biggie. That's next. I'll explain when we get back. And to repeat something I said yesterday, under Obamacare, pre-existing condition costs were coming out of the premiums that everybody else paid. So that's one of the reasons premiums under Obamacare skyrocketed, is because that money was what was being used to pay for pre-existing conditions. And this is why Obama really sulked young people. The idea was young people, they're never going to make claims. They're healthy. They're never going to get sick. So just charge the hell out of them and use that money for the elderly, the sick, and pre-existing conditions. But young people said, screw it, I'll pay the penalty. I'm not sick. I'm not dumb. I don't have the money to pay this anyway. So it broke down. Now, under Obamacare, essential health benefits, this is where essential health benefits is where Obama really stacked the deck on Obamacare and was able, after the bill was passed, to just randomly choose things that he would require insurance companies to cover, such as maternity care, veterinary maternity care. Insurance companies had to pay for sick death, all kind, whatever Obama wanted. This is how he made the Catholic Church have to pay for abortifacients, emergency services, preventative services, whatever Obama wanted the insurance companies to pay for, he threw in there. He did it via the Secretary of Health and Human Services, but they were called essential health benefits. In the Republican bill, states are allowed to waive all of that and set up their own standards. The Obama essential health benefits are gone, or will be, and that is another huge cost saving, because the insurance companies were raising premiums every time Obama said, you got to cover this, you got to cover that. Catholic Church has got to pay for employees to get abortions, whatever Obama mandated. The insurance companies had to raise prices on their premiums, and that's one of the reasons why premiums were skyrocketing. Republican bill brooms it and lets the states decide if and what. And Tom Price will be involved in this, of course, Secretary of Health and Human Services. But it's these two things, the pre-existing condition change and the essential health benefit change, are the two primary mechanisms that are thought to seriously lower everybody's insurance premiums. And that's when Poppy Harlow at CNN said that sick children, sick kids are now going to be the responsibility of the Republican Party. Okay, now back to the phones. People have been patiently waiting. House still has not begun its vote, still slated for this hour. Here is Skip in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Welcome. Great to have you here.
Hey, Rush. Good to be with you, man.
Thank you, sir.
wanted to thank you for focusing on the pre-existing condition language in Obamacare and back you up on that. Here's my point. The Obamacare pre-existing condition language has to go if you want the companies that are still in the health insurance business to stay and the ones that have gotten out to get back in. And here's why. If you leave his language in there, if you leave the current ACA pre-existing language in there, then you have to do three hugely unpopular things to go with that. And those are the individual mandate, it would have to stay. Number two, the penalty tax each year would have to be far greater than it is now, say $3,000 to $5,000 a year. And the third and most unpopular feature is you would have to close the ERs to adults that claim they don't have money or insurance. If you don't do those three things, people are going to game the system and the carriers will stay out.
And the latest carrier to announce they're getting out, this is in Iowa. Skip Biter, thanks very much. I'll expand on his point here in just a second. He's speaking to language in Obamacare, which I briefly reviewed here moments ago. Medica, M-E-D-I-C-A, might be Medica, I'm not sure how they pronounce it. Minnesota-based health insurer released a statement suggesting they were close to following two larger carriers in deciding not to sell policies in Iowa in 2018 due to instability in the market. Tens of thousands of Iowans could be left with no health insurance options next year after the last carrier for most of the state announced Wednesday that it likely would stop selling individual policies. Medica, or Medica, Minnesota-based health insurer, released a statement suggesting it was close to following two other carriers in deciding not to sell individual health policies in Iowa in 2018 because of the instability in the market. A statement from the outfit said that without swift action by the state or by Congress to provide stability to Iowa's individual market, we will not be able to serve the citizens there. Now, with millennials, one of the big words with millennials happens to be sustainability. It's a big word that is part of the leftist lexicon. It's a good word, don't miss it, but it has been appropriated by the left to mean the status quo of whatever the left wants must remain, and if it does, that's good. That's sustainability. And so young millennials have decided that if something's not sustainable, it isn't good. If it is sustainable, then it's wonderful. And since they say sustainability is everything, well, here you have another example. Obama and the Democrats gave you unsustainable health care. They created an economy that for many millennials made paying your student loans unsustainable. They promised solar and wind energy would sustain your energy needs, and they can't. Businesses are just as troubled and unaffordable health insurance. So there is literally no sustainability in Obamacare. Literally, it's falling apart right before our very eyes. Have you wondered, when you see the insurance companies dropping out, and I know you know it, we report it here, it's been happening ever since, probably started a year after Obamacare was signed into law. I wonder how many people actually stop and ask themselves why, or do they just conclude the insurance company's a bunch of tightwad, cheap SOBs, and they don't want to help people? Well, you never, because that's what the left tries to convince as many people as possible that all businesses do, that businesses, industries don't care about you. Soon you die. They don't care if their policies or their products kill you. And so if they're getting out of the insurance market, it means they don't care if you get sick. It means they don't want to pay to help you. They don't want to pay to keep you well. There are a lot of people think this because that's what the left has fostered for decades in their anti-capitalist and anti-corporate rants. But there's a reason these insurance companies are getting out. And that is people cannot afford the premiums they're having to charge. They just can't afford them. And if people are not buying policies, you can't make any money by offering things people don't buy. And if the policies are so expensive because of government mandates what you must cover, then the only option you have is getting out. The reason the insurance companies so eagerly embraced this, I think, was a mixture of folly and stupidity. The way Obama roped them in, folks, was with the mandates. Predominantly the individual mandate. Obamacare made it federal law that every one of us had to buy a product. That product was health insurance. Now, if you're the CEO, the CFO, the COO, or if you're even the janitor at a health insurance company, and you realize one day that every American has to buy your policy, what a godsend. You don't have to advertise anymore. There's no competition within the states. You've got a federal law with penalties for failure to comply that people must buy it. So it was a win-win. How could they lose? Of course they got in line with this. Of course they ended up supporting Obamacare. But the short-sightedness. People can't buy what they can't afford. And that's where we are. And the reason these premiums are skyrocketing is because of all of the mandates and requirements that Obama has slapped on insurance companies. In addition to liberalism's anti-capitalist bias, they also have this nonsensical belief that every corporation is rich with money that it's not spending. It's got money over there. It's hoarding it. It's stealing it. It's giving it to its CEO or whatever. It's not sharing it with anybody because they're selfish and greedy. And so we're going to go get more of that money. They don't realize that in a world dominated by liberal policies, that businesses are just barely able to get by with all the penalties and taxes and regulations. And the insurance industry, even with a federal mandate, couldn't stay in business. To give you an idea of how bad Obamacare is, with the entire adult population of the United States as a market which must buy your product, and they still can't stay viable. That's how bad Obamacare is, and that's why it's going to continue to collapse. And by the way, this was the design. As all of these insurance companies get out of it, well, people still need health insurance, and they still need treatment. They're still going to get sick. They're still going to need to go to the hospital. They're still going to need to go to the doctor. What are we going to do? At that point, the plan was for Obama or Hillary, whoever was president, to stand up and say, in the midst of this crisis, which has been created by our greedy insurance companies, we have decided that the only way this can go forward is if we, the federal government, become essentially the health care provider for everybody. And so we are the insurer, we are the provider, we're going to have single payer. We might put everybody under Medicare. We don't know how we're going to do it, but you're not going to have to bother with the private sector. That was the long-term plan. But Obamacare began to unravel sooner than the plan for it to unravel was, and Hillary lost the election. Now, what the caller was referring to here, the pre-existing condition policy, let me read. This is not the exact lingo, but it's sufficient. Obamacare required insurers to cover people regardless of pre-existing medical conditions and barred the insurance companies from setting prices based on a customer's health history. What this did was remove insurance from what was happening. And it turned health insurance companies into satellite government offices that were mandated to pay or charge whatever the Obama government administration told them to. If they couldn't set prices, based on any factor, the health of a person, the ability of a person to pay, subsidies, if insurers were required to cover everybody regardless of their health status, and they could not set prices, based on a customer's health history, well, we are not talking about insurance anymore. And yet it was insurance companies that were being forced to bear the brunt. And you see what happened. They were getting out. How many states now only have one insurance company in the individual market? We still can't compete across state lines. That's not even in this Republican bill. That's for the next phase or phase 3, which is still, I gather, on the drawing board. And what the caller's point was, if you're going to get to the point where the insurers have to pay, have to cover, that's what having to cover means, having to pay. Requires insurers cover people. That means their insurers have to pay it, regardless. His point was it wasn't going to be long before people figured out that all they had to do was come up with a way of claiming they've been sick for a while, and that's a pre-existing condition, and they can go anywhere and get covered for any reason, because the pre-existing condition pool is actually not in just in Obamacare, in the Republican bill. It happens to be the reason we're doing all of this. One other provision remains, and that is that your children can stay on your policy until they are 26. Republicans keep that in. Back in a second. Here's Greg in Columbus, Ohio, as we head back to the... Well, we're getting close to the vote because there's Ryan in the well now. By the way, there are some Republicans, I have to tell you this, there's some Republicans that are saying, we don't know what's in the bill. You know, I went through a list here of things that's been prepared. I've seen it in any number of places. I don't know, to be honest with you, exactly what's in the version being voted on, or if this is a list of things that has been put together of desires to be in the bill. But there are some Republicans, House Republicans, don't have names, who are running around saying they don't know what's in the bill. Now, you have to allow for the fact that the Republicans are not unified here. You got a bunch of anti-Ryan Republicans in the House. You have some anti-Trump Republicans in the House. So, well, screw that. You know, the left is making a big... The CBO hasn't scored. The CBO score on Obamacare was worthless. You know, the CBO hasn't scored it. I don't know how we can screw it. It never ends up being close to reality. CBO... You know, all these terms and policy procedures, to me, epitomize what's wrong with all of this. It's what complicates it. It's what it pushes common sense out of the way. Anyway, Greg, I'm glad you waited. Columbus, Ohio. You're next. Welcome to the Rush Limbaugh program. Hi.
Hey, good afternoon, Rush. Thank you for taking my call.
You bet.
I have a question about the health care Act, and it sounds like, well, hopefully it's going to pass the House. And I wanted to have your opinion on what you think the biggest hurdle will be for the Senate. And before you answer that, if you can educate me on whether it's 50 or 60 votes.
Well, 60 votes is always going to be the big hurdle in the Senate. But issue-wise, that's almost impossible to know. Nearly impossible to predict. I mean, you would have to say, to common sense, you would have to say that pre-existing conditions are going to continue to be an area where opponents are going to attack this thing, be they on the Republican or Democrat side. I think you're going to hear a lot of, we don't even know what's in this thing. The Republicans didn't even know what you say. You didn't read Obamacare. Well, hell, the Republicans can't tell you what's in their own bill. There will be, believe me, the drive-bys are going to be in full court press mode to destroy this. They want Obamacare maintained. This is Obama's legacy here that's about to be erased. So they'll want to be in full protection mode on that, unless they're convinced that this bill will destroy them, the Republicans. Then they'll happily let it happen or advocate for it. But get back with me on this. It isn't going to be long. We'll know pretty soon what some of the objections are. All we know now is what we always know, that many in the Senate are saying it's DOA. Many in the Senate are saying, I don't know, based on what I've heard, I can't support this, which is always a negotiating opener. But remember, this is very, very important. If this passes the House, you're going to witness scenarios where it looks like the whole thing has been done. This achievement is going to be said to represent a major, major, major accomplishment, even though it's just 1/3 of the way to enactment. Greg, I appreciate the phone call. We are doing Open Line Friday on Thursday today, a short week for me. I have to be absent tomorrow, so we get back to the phones. Whatever you want to talk about on the phone or whatever you want to ask me is fine. It's 800-282-2882, and we'll be back before you know it. Do I know these people or do I know these people? During the break, they're planning this massive party at the White House, this massive celebration. They've already arranged for the buses to take key members of the Republican Party up to the White House and celebrate the passage of the Republican health care bill here in the House. Now remember, this is 1/3 of the way. Because if the Senate doesn't pass the House bills, there's two things that can happen. The Senate can kill it, or they can come up with their own version. Now, if the Senate comes up with their own version, you've got the House bill, you've got the Senate bill. What happens next is they come together in what's called the Conference Committee, where representatives of the House and the Senate get together on the Republican side and try to negotiate the differences. And then that bill is sent back to both the House and Senate again for votes by the full House and the full Senate. And then if it passes both, it goes up to the White House for the signature of the president. Now, when it gets to the Senate, that's when all kinds of fireworks are going to happen because of this 60-vote filibuster rule. But a lot of this is going to be budget reconciliation, so they can do it with 51 votes. But there's going to be a move, I predict, to have massive changes in Senate procedure here to get rid of this 60-vote requirement, the filibuster, on as much as possible. And there's going to be opposition in the Senate. Every Democrat's going to oppose it, even though, you should know this, Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer, last fall, when they thought that Hillary was going to win, publicly said that they were going to change the rules and eliminate the filibuster. Not the real filibuster where you can go to the House floor and talk for as long as you can, but they're going to eliminate this 60-vote requirement. They were going to do it, just like they had done for judicial nominations. They were going to do it on everything. And, of course, Hillary did not win, so that hasn't happened. This procedure, this 60-vote thing, is not part of the original construction of the Senate. I think this, I could be wrong about this, but I think this goes back to the administration of Woodrow Wilson, the 60-vote filibuster rule in the Senate. And so it's not long-time Senate. Well, I guess it's about 100 years old. It's, if you want to call it, a Senate tradition. And, of course, the Senate diehards will say, we can't change this. This is sacrosanct. You cannot get rid of a rule like this. There are people already saying, if we didn't have that 60-vote rule, we'd have already been a socialist country. It might have even been Lindsey Graham who said that the 60-vote requirement has saved this nation from left-wing radical policies. They can't count how many times. So anyway, don't know how it's going to end up. There's going to be fireworks over that, because once this passes the House, there's going to be a full court press to get this passed everywhere. You know, I fully expect something else. You know, the Pelosi and the Democrats are out there now talking about how everybody's going to die, and kids are going to get sick and die, and people are going to lose their health insurance. And we played the sound bites for you earlier. Let's not forget. It's been a while, but let's not forget. Don't forget that it was Barack Obama who said, if you like your doctor, you keep your doctor. If you like your health care plan, you keep your health care plan. It was Barack Obama who said, in the run-up to this passing the first time around, that your average premium is going to come down $2,500 a year. Well, you weren't able to keep your doctor, you weren't able to keep your plan, and your premium, by no stretch, went down. So everything that the Democrats are warning about now is already happening. People are losing their health insurance. They're being priced out of the market. They're losing their doctors. They're losing their plans. They can't afford it already. People are already. That's why this crisis exists, because Obamacare has destroyed the health care system in this country as it was. They haven't destroyed health care. It's still some of the best in the world. They have destroyed the mechanism by which it functions and by which it was largely accessible and affordable. And now for these people to be running around, these Democrats to be running around talking about how you're going to lose your insurance and you're going to lose your life and your kids are going to die. I've had to listen to this for I don't know how many years, and one of the things I got mad about in the budget deal is they continue to get away with this absolute lunacy instead of having it buried and done with once and for all by being called out on all of it. So anyway, that's the status here with the vote having begun. It's going to pass the House, and I wouldn't even be voting. And there is going to be a big celebration. And there's going to be a trip to the White House. And there's going to be, well, you're going to think it's become law by virtue of the way they celebrate this. And that's still a long way off. Other items here in the stack, unfortunately, at the top, Hillary Clinton news. Now, as we said earlier, Hillary Clinton has come up with another reason why she lost the presidency. And she's now blaming debate moderators, not making this up, because they did not ask Trump any questions about job creation. Look, don't ask me to explain this. The woman clearly is not there. The woman has been bamboozled by what happened to her. She's a two-time humiliated loser. And this time around, this was supposed to be the easiest presidential victory in the history of campaigns, because Trump was supposed to be so unelectable. Trump was the biggest buffoon that's ever run. All Hillary had to do was show up and be on the ballot, and she would win by a landslide, and she ends up losing. A deep, profound humiliation. And she lost with Obama campaigning for her multiple times a day while asking people to vote for her to continue his legacy. His legacy was sent packing. He was sent packing. Hillary was sent packing. The American people said at the ballot box, we don't want any more of this. And they can't even now come to grips with it. So the latest excuse is that Trump was not asked any questions at the debates about job creation. But he was. He was asked in two different debates about it. But so what? Even if he hadn't been, was she asked about job creation and her answers were insufficient, or what? I mean, that's how grasping for straws they are. Hillary's also starting a new political action committee and is going to resume giving paid speeches. This is in Axios, a new website. It's an offshoot of the Politico. Clinton's PAC will work as a quiet catalyst to help grassroots political organizations. She also plans to direct funds to congressional candidates next year. The PAC is not a vehicle for a 2020 presidential campaign by Hillary Clinton. So essentially, what this really is, this new PAC, this is a new way for the Clintons to launder money again. Now that the crime family foundation's on the skids, they just can't help themselves. They live in the world of donors. They live in the world asking people for money. That's all she knows how to do. They don't know how to earn it. Well, unless you consider giving speeches to donors for $250,000, earning it. Dana Milbank at the Washington Post, a columnist, a huge Hillary supporter, died in the wool. He has a piece today explaining why Hillary lost. It's based on Comey's testimony yesterday at the Senate. Headline, now we know Bill Clinton cost his wife the presidency. No, here's what the headline is. I mean, if this is what Milbank's going to say, what's not in that headline? Now we know Bill Clinton cost his wife the presidency. What's not in that headline? Russia. Here's the headline. Now we know Vladimir Putin did not cost Hillary the presidency. That ought to be the headline to Milbank's piece. If he's going to blame Bill Clinton and not Vladimir Putin, then the headline ought to be, now we know Vladimir Putin did not cost Hillary the presidency. And here's how his piece begins. So now it can be told. Bill Clinton cost his wife the presidency. Almost 3 hours into a hearing, the Senate Judiciary Committee on Wednesday, James Comey shed new light on his decision to go public about the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. The specific reason he cited, Bill Clinton's decision to board Attorney General Loretta Lynch's plane late June when their planes are both on the tarmac in Phoenix. And then he quotes Comey. The capper was, and I'm not picking on Attorney General Lynch because I like her very much, but her meeting with President Clinton on that airplane was the capper for me. Comey decided to step away and announce without consulting the Justice Department that Hillary Clinton should not be charged. Once he saw, because he knew that Lynch was compromised. The minute she took the meeting with Clinton on the plane, he said that was the capper. And he had to go out. He had to go out and do that July 5th press conference after he had seen that. He had to say that she wasn't going to be charged because he was losing control of the investigation. What with that? Milbank says, in Comey's telling, this public announcement in turn required Comey to speak up again in October when more emails were found. Having done that, And then having testified repeatedly under oath that we're done, it would be disastrous, catastrophic concealment not to go public on October 28th. This is Comey. And Milbank says it's a tragic chain of events, and if Bill Clinton hadn't boarded that plane, Comey might not have spoken out in July, which means he wouldn't have felt compelled to speak up again in October, which means Hillary would be president. What's everybody missing here? Why did Bill Clinton get on the plane? Why did Loretta Lynch let Clinton get on the plane? Why did Clinton care to get on the plane? When he heard that Loretta Lynch was also on the tarmac, why did Clinton tell his pilot, make a beeline for that plane, bud? I got to get on a plane, see Loretta. Why'd he do it? Because Hillary had started all of this. If Hillary Clinton hadn't violated the law and set up this server and been throwing around classified data all over God's creation, none of the rest of this would have happened. You notice how these Hillary acolytes, it's always somebody else. It's never Hillary. And she is the sole reason any of this happened. She's the reason there's an investigation. She's the reason Clinton got on a plane to talk to Loretta. She's the reason Loretta let Clinton get on the plane. Well, she let Clinton get on the plane because Clinton appointed her U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, which is in Brooklyn. It's in Long Island. I mean, these people are thick as thieves, and they were compromised. But that's the answer. As far as Comey is concerned, somebody sent me a note today that they actually had spent a lot of time watching Comey's testimony yesterday, and they felt bad for his dilemma. He really did have a dilemma. And he shouldn't have. He may have, but he shouldn't have had one. You know why? He should never have done that July 5th press conference. That was the big no-no. It was unprecedented. The FBI just doesn't do this. The Department of Justice, nobody gives you a press conference to announce no charges. It just doesn't happen. And they never do a press conference listing the allegations that are not resulting in a charge. In this case, Comey listed allegation after allegation after allegation and violation after violation. And we thought at the time that he was actually trying to inform the American voter of just how egregious Hillary had behaved, because there weren't going to be charges for political reasons. But he should never have done that July 5th press conference. But he says now he had to because Loretta Lynch took the meeting with Clinton. So he had to do it. And he closed the investigation. He said there aren't going to be any charges. We can't find any intent, which is bogus. The statute doesn't require intent. Okay, the bill is passed in the House. So the Obamacare repeal and replace has passed in the House. And now there's going to be a party like it has become law, but it hasn't yet. It now has to go to the... What are you snickering at in there? Oh, is that... The Democrats were waving goodbye, bye at the end of the vote. What the Democrats meant, you just buried yourselves. Goodbye, we'll see you in 2018. You're repealing something everybody likes. You're taking people's health care away from them. You're killing children again. We'll see you in 2018. So the Democrats are happy. You can expect that to be portrayed in the drive-by media as well. Okay, brief timeout. We'll come back and resume. Lots of people lined up and want to talk, and we'll get to that right after this. 217 votes. 218. Whatever. They got it by one more than what they needed. The Democrats on the floor of the House were singing, no, 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 hey, hey, goodbye. As though it's the end of the Republicans. You've just signed your death warrant here, gang. You have repealed Obamacare, and you're going to get killed for it, meaning politically. And then there's a bunch of left-wing protesters out the bottom of the steps of the Capitol shouting, shame, shame. Meanwhile, President Trump's getting ready to throw a party in the Rose Garden. The buses are already there waiting to take them up to the White House. Yeah, I remember the Democrats, the media saying, it wasn't that long ago when the first attempt to bring the repeal Obamacare vote to a vote didn't happen. Remember the drive-bys were saying that's it, repeal is dead forever. If they can't get the votes, the repeal is dead forever. And now today, The first step toward repealing and replacing Obamacare has occurred. Josh, Brick, New Jersey, thank you for waiting, and welcome to the EIB Network. Hi.
Thank you for taking my call, Rush. Anyone that accuses you of taking the party line ought to listen to the interview with Mike Pence. That was a great interview. But to my point, I have a theory about Trump. Is it possible that Trump almost doesn't mind losing first and then winning? That kind of shores up his base. They all think he's abandoning them, and then he comes through again. He did that during the campaign.
You mean
the wall?
You mean Trump might not mind losing it first, and then comes back and wins, and makes it look like an even bigger win, like a giant recovery, like a big comeback, and making himself appear even bigger?
Exactly. He doesn't just not mind losing. He likes to lose first and then to come back and win. And he accomplishes with that two things. Number one, he accomplishes that, with the past budget thing that everyone's upset about. He can make it look like he's bipartisan, and then.
Well, have you seen evidence of this in Trump's life, where he doesn't mind losing so that when he wins it looks even bigger?
I think, Rush, during the campaign, he came out very hard against immigration. He then said, you have to, he has a great heart. He doesn't mind to deport. He's not going to deport everyone, and everyone thought he was kind of backing off on the wall. Then he gave that big speech, and then he gave that big speech, throw the wall, and then a lot of those people that were on his advisory board resigned after. So we see clearly he enjoys doing that, and that will gain him. Besides for losing and then coming back and winning.
Let me ask you, do you think the president knows that the bill does not become law today, or do you think he thinks it does?
With Trump, it's all about winning, and after this whole big win and everyone's going to be in the White House taking pictures, I don't think the Republicans in the Senate, even if they really do oppose it, are going to want to oppose him. I think they're going to on the train and kind of. They might need some persuasion, but this is true.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right.
Victory.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you what's going to happen, folks. If they do go the route of budget reconciliation here, which is, by the way, just remember that is how Obama passed Obamacare. They did budget reconciliation, 51 votes. They just said to hell with going through normal Senate procedures. They ran the Senate. The Republicans didn't have enough votes to stop anything the first 2 years. Now, the one thing about budget reconciliation, if that's the route that McConnell chooses to go here, you have to know something. There are no limits on amendments. Anybody can propose an amendment, and if McConnell wants to let that amendment come up for a debate and a vote, then so be it. Limitless amendments. So by the time this is over with in the Senate, it could well look like nothing the House sent over. That's one of the aspects of going budget reconciliation, is that there is no limit on amendments. There's amendments galore here, and those can be used to make it worse, to kill it. They can be used to improve it, to make it better. With all due respect, I don't think Trump calculates losing first and then coming back and winning second. I think that he doesn't want to risk losing. I don't think they intended to lose the first round of this. That wasn't the objective, and it wasn't the plan. They didn't want the grief. I know what your theory is, that losing it the first time, then coming back and getting it today after the media said, no way, it's dead, it's over. Trump can show a giant recovery and rebirth. And I can understand why you would think that way, but I don't think that is the strategy. Lexington, Illinois. Eddie, great to have you on the EIB Network. Hello.
Rush, I have a comment about Comey, and then I wanted to ask you a very specific question.
Sure.
Comey let Hillary off the hook 2 days before the election, and yet we now know that he had some very new information. He now knew that classified information was relayed from Hillary and Huma to Anthony Weiner, a very compromised and high-risk person for being blackmailed. And Comey also knew the Russians were hacking everything. So when he said, I haven't found anything new or anything that would change anything, that he left some information out there that Hillary is very fortunate that was left out, because it would have been a landslide. And here's my question for you. Comey apparently believes Hillary committed a crime, but the Attorney General wasn't going to prosecute her. Right now, Comey is the head of the FBI, and Jeff Sessions is the head of the Justice Department. Is that what is he doing? Is that okay? If it's okay if you commit a crime, but if you lose an election, then it doesn't matter? If he's a principled person, the crime that he was disappointed in Loretta Lynch for not prosecuting, that problem no longer exists. I mean, he's just a deep stater like everybody else if he doesn't do the right thing.
Well, you're going to have to check my memory on this. The first part before you got to the question, I know that it looks like Comey exonerated her twice, but the Clintons don't think that, and the Democrats don't think that. The Democrats look at that July 5th press conference as a dual-edged sword. The first half of it, Comey listed the things that she did wrong and acknowledged that many of them were criminal. He didn't charge her, which is the second half of that presser, because he couldn't find intent. So back then, Comey was a hero. Back then, Comey was a great guy. He deserved to be FBI director for life. James Comey's the greatest guy that's ever been because he said Hillary was innocent. Then, the October 28th letter to Congress, because they had found stuff with Huma, her computer and on Weiner's computer. And Comey says he's had to reopen the investigation, and this is looking bad. And a number of days went by before Comey said, sorry, nothing to see here, nothing's changed, we couldn't find. The Clinton camp thinks that nobody heard the exoneration, that all they heard was Comey reopened because something very suspicious looking, and that's why the Clintons think that 28th of October letter did her in. Look, these people are so, I don't know how to describe them, but none of this is Comey's fault, no matter how badly he botched it or how well he played it, or however you want to look at it. This is all on Hillary. You know, she even took responsibility for it for a couple of seconds and then starts blaming everybody. Now, as to I know your question, okay, they said back when Loretta Lynch was the Attorney General, they're not going to charge because she got on a plane with Clinton and there was no intent. But now it's a whole different regime in there. You got Sessions in there, not Lynch, and you got Trump in there and not Clinton. So doesn't that change things? And couldn't Comey go after her now? It ought to be abundantly clear Comey doesn't want to go after her, folks. Comey does not want to bring charges. Now, correct me if I'm wrong about this. Didn't Trump say, during the campaign, he said that he thought that she should be investigated and should be in jail, and that's why his supporters were chanting, lock her up. But didn't he say, shortly around inauguration time or sometime after he won the election, that he didn't want to go forward and prosecute her? So I don't know that Sessions and the DOJ have any intention of taking advantage of the fact they run the show now and could make a move on investigating her. And I don't know that Sessions has recused himself from a lot. I don't know if he's recused himself from this by virtue of recusing himself from the Russian investigation or not. But I don't think there is the political will to revise and change especially after Comey's cleared her. I mean, Comey said there's no intent. We can't charge her. No reasonable prosecutor would. And if he doesn't find any new evidence, then why would he come up and say, by the way, you know what? We got a new president, new attorney general. You know what? I did see intent. We're going to go after. I don't see that happening. Quick timeout. We have more back after this. Well, this is great, folks. There is this giant motorcade of buses and police cars with the lights and sirens going, escorting victorious members of the House to the White House for the big celebration with President Trump. I mean, it's like two giant buses, a little yellow bus after that, and a bunch of red vehicles, law enforcement vehicles, and the bubblegum lights are on, and they're making a big show out of this. And this is just ramming it down the throats of the Democrats, because they're acting like this vote, it has become law. And I think Trump knows that it's not yet law. But they're acting like... And now they've got this little bunch of ragtag band of good-time plastic banana rock and rollers over at Lafayette Park raising hell, about 8 or 10 of them, shouting shame, shame, and the Democrats are singing whatever they're saying. This is just... what a show. It'd be funny if the caravan stops at the Trump International Hotel for an adult beverage on the way, complimentary, on the way to the White House. Let's see, who's next? This Jennifer in Denver. Jennifer, I'm glad you called. It's great to have you on the program. How are you?
Hi, Russ. I'm good. My point is pertaining to millennials losing hair due to stress. And I think that it's not that the world is any more stressful today than it's been at any other time in our history, with climate change or terrorism.
Right.
It's that the millennials haven't been given the tools to deal with stress.
Are you a millennial?
No, I'm a Gen Xer.
Okay. Yeah, the millennials are Generation Y. Okay.
And, in this culture today of everyone gets a trophy and everyone wins and parents do homework for the kids and projects, and they've never been taught how to deal with any type of adversity. And they get to college or high school and there's all these anxiety disorders are through the roof, but they've never been taught from little kids to now.
I actually think, Jennifer, I think you've got a point. How do people become these soft little fragile snowflakes on college campus, unable to even deal with people who just say words they don't agree with?
Right. Well, it starts in kindergarten these days.
I know. No, daycare.
Right.
Starts in daycare.
Exactly.
Well, she's reacting. Jennifer, thank you very much. I've got a very closing time window here, and I don't mean to be rude. She's reacting to a caller earlier this week who said, look, you got to understand these millennials. I mean, from the moment they've been able to understand English, everything about their day is going to kill them. Climate change is going to kill them. Terrorism is going to kill them. Food's going to kill them. Republicans are going to kill them. Everything they're facing, they're scared to death. And that's why they're losing their hair at 18 or 19. And they don't have a common bond of patriotism, love of country. There's nothing positive in their reinforcement mechanisms to deal with this because they've not been taught that. They've not been taught how great their country is. They've not been told that they alone can succeed. And it was a very persuasive argument, but so is Jennifer's here. That their stress level really is no different than any other generation. We've all had our problems, but they haven't been taught any coping skills. I think there's something to be said for that. I mean, if everybody gets a trophy and nobody loses, and 2 + 2 is 5 until you figure out it isn't, I think that's a factor. Not having been taught ways of coping, reacting, or any of that, because it's clearly necessary. Everybody needs to have some sort of boundaries instead of letting all of these threatening things in and becoming deeply personal. Jennifer, thanks much. I appreciate it. One of the objectives for this gigantic bash at the White House, the members of the House just got there. It's at 3:30 when this bash gets underway. They might be putting on a show for Republicans in the Senate. This is going to be a major display of Republican unity up there. I don't think every House member is going. Not sure. There were 3 buses. I don't know if you get 235 people on 3 buses. But regardless, it's nevertheless, it's going to have a huge message to it. And I think the Senate Republicans are one of the people that the thing is targeted to. Folks, I have to be out tomorrow. As I said, Mark Stein's here. We'll be back Monday. See you then.